in the 7th year of our marriage, I discovered in the room that my pajamas smelled like a perfume I never wore. It was the scent of his first love's favorite perfume. Did Jocelyn Joe wear these clothes? Divorce. She just accidentally stained the clothes and borrowed your pajamas. You're being ridiculously petty about this. You want a divorce over it? Yes, fine. Divorce if you want, but don't come crying and begging me to come back with no dignity, like a dog wagging its tail. How did this marriage come about? Did I really want to marry you? I've been hoping you'd ask for a divorce for ages. When I planned to take a shower, I picked up a pajama and smelled the rose perfume on it. I never wear rose-scented perfume because it's Ogden Mount's first love's favorite scent, and it's also my least favorite. I calmly tore the pajamas to shreds, looked at the racks, and called Ogden Mounts in. Ogden Mounts entered the room, looking at the shredded pajamas and my cold stare. What are you flipping out about now? I've been busy with business meetings all day. I don't have the energy or desire to argue with you. Did Jocelyn Joe come back? His gaze flickered. Yes, she's back. Jocelyn Joe was his first love, who had left because her father was ill, and the Mounts family was in decline. She had no choice but to marry another wealthy man and move to Canada with him because their separation was filled with regret. She remained an unforgettable memory for him, a fiery red rose. This is the clothes Jocelyn Joe wore. He responded nonchalantly, yes. At that moment, the thought of divorce surged in my mind. Divorce. She just accidentally stained the clothes and borrowed your pajamas. You're so petty about this that you want a divorce. Yes, fine. Divorce if you want, but don't come begging me to come back with no dignity, like a dog. How did this marriage even start? Did I really want to marry you? I've been hoping you'd ask for a divorce for a long time. He married me just to fulfill his mother's last wish. She had been bedridden for 2 years, and I took care of her. Before she passed away, she saw through my feelings and asked Ogden Mounts to marry me, with the condition that he couldn't bring up divorce. I found out about this later. At the time, he had earnestly proposed to me, saying he wanted to build a new future with me. I thought he was genuinely willing to let go of the past and start anew with me. Not long after we married, his mother passed away. Since then, he's been indifferent towards me, no matter how good I was to him. He never genuinely smiled. It was only when I discovered he had hired his secretary, who resembled Jocelyn Joe, that I realized he never forgot her. He was more affectionate towards her, using the same infatuated gaze, and even fought with clients for her. When I had to bail him out at the police station, he was gently comforting his secretary, and I saw the secretary's eyes, which closely resembled Jocelyn Joe's. I realized that during the 4 years I had poured my heart into being with him, he had never forgotten Jocelyn Joe. I went on a rampage, smashing everything in his office and forcing him to fire her. Since then, we started sleeping in separate rooms. It was during that fight that he admitted his proposal was just to fulfill his mother's wish, and that he never loved me. From that moment on, I started to hate him. If he didn't love me, he shouldn't have agreed to marry me. To marry me just to fulfill his mother's wish was to sacrifice my life. Why should he get to restart his life after delaying mine for so many years? Our tormenting marriage lasted 7 years. For 15 years, from youth to now, I kept running towards him, while I never thought of coming a step closer to me. This incident was just a trigger. Our marriage would eventually end. I was just unwilling to give up without a fight. During these 7 years, I clung to him stubbornly, even if it meant mutual suffering. Suddenly, I felt too exhausted. Exhausted to the point that I mentioned divorce calmly, a topic I never thought I would bring up. The moment I brought it up, I felt a sense of relief. It wasn't that hard after all. It's over now. Ogden Mounts, you're free. I'll draft the divorce agreement soon, and we'll split the assets evenly. You better stick to your word. I'm used to this house now. I hope to keep it. For now, please leave. He stormed out in anger. Over the years, he had accumulated considerable wealth, making SF division complicated. To avoid affecting the company's stock price, we couldn't announce the divorce yet. I agreed, since I would still have half the money, and didn't see the need to make things difficult over money. At the company's 5th anniversary party, as the chairman's wife, I had to attend. At the banquet, I saw Jocelyn Joe. After 7 years, she still looked pitiful, wearing a white gown, surrounded by a few men fawning over her. Ogden Mounts' face remained unchanged, his hand gripping the wine glass tightly as he took a sip to mask his anger. I knew this was a sign he was upset. The next moment, Jocelyn Joe twisted her ankle and fell backward. Ogden Mounts rushed to her, pulling her into his embrace in front of everyone. They didn't seem to want to let go, causing others to look at me with a mix of curiosity, mockery, disdain, and pity. I swirled my wine glass and smiled, saying, "First loves are unforgettable. It's inevitable. But, darling, if you keep holding her like that, while I believe you are innocent, others won't." Jocelyn Joe's face turned uncomfortable, her gaze at me filled with resentment. Ogden Mounts finally let her go, and came to put his arm around my waist, speaking in a low voice. Jealous? We're getting a divorce anyway. I knew you'd pull a stunt like this. I interrupted him. We're not officially divorced yet. I don't want the scandal of the Collins Group chairman to break out tomorrow, especially since I still own half of the company stock. His eyes grew colder as he listened to my response. I then pushed his hand away from my waist. I'm going to greet the other wives. A few steps away, Jocelyn Joe approached me with a wine glass, leaning in and speaking softly. Beverly Jim, I gave you my discarded shoes and you found a treasure. I didn't expect him to make a comeback, but it's okay as long as I snap my fingers. He'll come back to me like a dog. How pathetic. He and I are both so pathetic. I once thought his white moonlight loved him so much, and that their separation was unavoidable. It turns out it was just an excuse for loving money over poverty, behind which he begged me and called him a dog. If it were before, I would have been furious, hysterical, and argued with her to defend Ogden Melts. Now, I smiled and responded. It seems like you want to go back, wanting to reclaim your trash. Turns out you're just a garbage can. She abruptly raised her glass to toast me. I am sorry for what happened earlier. Then she spilled the wine on her own neckline. As I reached out to stop her, she fell to the ground. Beverly, I know my past with Ogden Melts is a thorn in your side, but it's all in the past. I just wanted to apologize. You don't have to throw wine on me and push me to make a public scene. I reached out to pull her up from the ground, warning her not to play these games. Ogden Melts immediately came to my side, gripping my arm tightly enough that I felt my bones might break. He glared at me and said, "Don't be so unreasonable. Apologize to Jocelyn and don't make a scene at the anniversary party." I shook off his hand. Since he didn't care about the company, why should I keep defending it? Tears welled up in my eyes as I looked at him. What's wrong with your eyes? Can't you see? She fell to the ground on her own and still expects me to apologize. Are you so enchanted by her that you're blind? He was stunned for the first time by the sight of me about to cry. I looked at Jocelyn Joe on the floor. When you're playing these clumsy tricks, check for surveillance. You fell to the ground on your own. Don't pretend to be a White Lotus. Are you really not trying to rekindle things with Ogden Melts? Saying this, I poured the wine on her head. Since you say I should apologize by throwing wine, I'll make it real. I'm really sorry. Jocelyn Joe was startled by my public act of throwing wine and screamed. Many of the attendees were wealthy wives, familiar with mistresses. They began to point and whisper, calling Jocelyn Joe a vixen. Jocelyn Joe dug her nails into the dirt and began to sob. Ogden Melts took off his suit jacket and covered her with it, lifting her from the ground. He announced to the crowd, I'd been planning to divorce Beverly Jim for a long time due to incompatibility. I intended to handle everything before making it public, but since so many people are here today, I'm announcing it in advance. Jocelyn Joe peeked out and looked at me with the satisfaction of a winner. I clenched my fists, feeling a pang of pain. Although the truth might be on the surveillance, he didn't even want to check and chose to unconditionally favor Jocelyn Joe. He couldn't stand others calling her a vixen and didn't want her to bear the mistress label, so he rushed to announce the divorce. I had loved Ogden Melts for 15 years, occupying half my life. The withdrawal symptoms were inevitable since I could bring up the divorce. I believe I'll soon get over it. The news of my divorce from Ogden Melts quickly made it to the magazines and reached my family. My mother, who I rarely talked to, immediately called me. Beverly Jim, how can you be so useless? You couldn't even keep your husband. Are you a failure? You're 30 now. Do you think you'll find a better husband than Ogden Melts after this divorce? If a man cheats, it's not because you're not good enough. Your hard attitude makes you unappealing. Don't you know women should be gentle? Besides, what's the point of closing one eye? Don't forget your brother still works at Collins Group. What will happen to him if you divorce? Before she could continue her rant, I hung up the phone. I first erased my mother didn't ask me if I was upset or if I felt wronged. Instead, she scolded me for giving up the golden son-in-law in her eyes and for causing inconvenience to my brother's job. Beverly Jim, what are you longing for? Hasn't it always been like this? An awful upbringing makes you give your all for just a bit of kindness from Ogden Melts. How could you expect a mother and brother who only want to suck your blood to show you any care? I shouldn't have softened and given them money for medical expenses, or bought them a house when they came asking for help. How naive of me. I went to a bar, ordered quite a few drinks, and thought about the past as I drank. When my mother gave birth to me, she was sent off to do farm work on the very day I was born because I was a girl. From the moment I was born, she loathed me, didn't like holding me, and showed no affection. After my brother was born, she showered him with all her love, giving him freshly laid eggs and buying him new school bags and clothes. I could only look on enviously. In my memory, all my clothes and school bags were hand-me-downs from my cousin's family, and even if I secretly tasted an egg, I'd be punished. Only when I could do chores would she show me a bit of a smile. I longed for my mother's smile and worked hard to help out at home. Even so, when I graduated from middle school at 15, she still wanted to send me to the city to work in a factory. She said, "Beverly, our family has no money left. We can only afford to educate one person. What's the use of a girl getting so much education? It's better to start working early to help support the family and have a dowry for when you marry," which would help hers. Even though I was always in the top 5 in my grade, and my brother was always at the bottom, it would still be me going to work. The night before they planned to send me to the city, I secretly ran away. That night, I met Ogden Maltz, who had been kidnapped and brought to our village. The kidnappers were demanding $300,000 from his family. When he saw me, he told me not to make a sound and that if I could rescue him, he would grant me any wish. I thought that if his family could offer $300,000, they could surely afford to support my education. Taking advantage of the fact that the kidnappers were asleep, I quietly untied him and helped him escape the village. He immediately called the police while waiting for his family to arrive at the station. My parents also came to the police station, trying to report me missing. When they saw me at the police station, they wanted to hit me right there. It was Ogden Maltz who pulled me behind him. "She's been missing all night, and you're more concerned with hitting her than worrying about her." It was the first time someone had protected me from being beaten. "This is our daughter's upbringing. What does it have to do with you? I'm going to be responsible for her from now on. You can hit her all you want, but this is a police station. Even parents can't engage in domestic violence here." He turned to me and said, "Don't be afraid. I won't let them hurt you." That was the first time I felt a flutter in my heart. I had never received any special affection or protection, but he gave it to me. When his mother, Sun Yanjiao, arrived, he mentioned sponsoring my education. I knew that if the money went to my parents, it wouldn't be used for me. I asked his mother if she could take me to the city for school and pay my tuition directly. I'd figure out how to manage living expenses on my own. His mother persuaded my father, saying, "A factory job in the city only earns 2 or 3,000 a month. If I bring Beverly Jim back to the city for school, she could earn much more in the future as a white-collar or blue-collar worker." They still refused, saying that if I left and didn't return, it would be better to earn a bit now and find someone to marry in a few years with a dowry. "How much is the dowry?" $66,000. His mother directly gave my family $66,000, saying it would count as the dowry. I was taken to the Maltz home and started high school. Whenever someone mocked me for being unsophisticated at school, he defended me and even fought for me. He would tutor me when my grades fell behind, helping me keep up. Since then, I had always secretly been in love with Ogden Maltz. Why couldn't he always be that protected boy? How did he become the loathsome person he is now? As I was getting drunk, a man approached me, trying to flirt and touch me. I coldly refused. "I'm not interested." The man wouldn't give up, trying to pull me up while talking cruelly about high standards. Unable to break free, I bit him. He raised his hand to slap me. Someone grabbed his fist and punched him in the face. "Why don't you get lost? Can you see she's not interested?" "Thank you." I bowed in gratitude. "Senior, no need to be so formal. We were in the same school before." I looked at him in confusion, as I didn't recognize him. "I'm Gregory Keats. I used to see you represent the student council and was impressed. Can I add you on Wicket?" He naturally took out his phone and showed me the keyword code. Since he had just saved me, I felt I couldn't refuse. After adding him, he said he was worried about me getting too drunk and offered to take me home. When we reached downstairs, I saw the lights on and the villa. Ogden Maltz was back. Once Gregory left, I went inside. Before I even took off my shoes, Ogden Maltz yanked me inside and slammed me against the wall, demanding, "Who was that little white face who just took you home?" Seeing his expression, I couldn't help but chuckle. "Are you jealous?" His face was a mix of emotions. "You're daydreaming." I knew it was impossible. He'd rather divorce me. He wouldn't care who I was with. "I just hope that since we aren't officially divorced yet, you don't create any scandals that could affect Collins Group." I laughed mockingly and pushed him away. "Ogden Maltz, you're really something. You've already left with Jocelyn Zhou in public, and the newspapers are reporting it. Now you're telling me not to affect Collins Group." I walked into the room, unbuttoning the top button of my shirt. The alcohol had made it hard for me to breathe. His gaze was fixed on my face, his tone chilling. "Out drinking and messing around like this. You shouldn't bring up irrelevant matters. If you have something to say, just say it. The financials are settled split evenly." "No problem. The house is yours too. The main issue is the division of shares. I hold 51% of the company's shares. So in the divorce, I can only give you 20%. I still want to be the largest shareholder." "Fine. Draft the agreement as soon as possible, and we'll sign it." "Beverly Jim, let's see how long you can keep up the act." He said this and headed upstairs. "I told you I want this house. Please leave." It's too late now. I'll stay in the guest room. If you keep talking, I might not give you the house. Never mind. It's not worth arguing about. After all, we've been sleeping separately for years, so I'm not afraid of what he might do. The next day, I received an anonymous text message on my phone. It was full of insults. Beverly Jim, you couldn't compete with me 10 years ago, and you can't now. Don't delude yourself into thinking you can make Ogden Mounts change his mind. From the tone, it was clearly Jocelyn Joe. I immediately blocked her. Ogden Mounts met Jocelyn Joe 10 years ago, during our freshman year. Before Jocelyn Joe appeared, my relationship with Ogden Mounts had always been ambiguous. He never denied others teasing me as his child bride. He would also have a dark expression whenever someone confessed to me. I even planned to confess to him right after graduation. I worked hard to excel and become worthy of everything his family had done for me. Then Jocelyn Joe arrived and spoiled everything between us. She first approached me to befriend me, probing about my relationship with Ogden Mounts, knowing that I depended on the Mounts family for my education, and that I had a secret crush on him. She joined the same club as us, played in the band, and gradually became part of our lives. Before we even graduated, she confessed to Ogden Mounts. In our sophomore year, I heard the news that they were together. I couldn't believe she knew I liked Ogden Mounts. I wanted to confront him to find out if it was true. When I found them, they were passionately kissing on the school balcony. Tears streamed down my face, burned by the setting sun. I asked Jocelyn Joe why she did this. She said she liked Ogden Mounts too and had the right to pursue him. Since we weren't together, she had no reason to be questioned. I couldn't cling to him for life just because he helped me. He never said he liked me. No wonder she had subtly inquired about Ogden Mounts' interests, claiming she wanted to help me pursue him. It was just an excuse to get close to him. After that, I began to distance myself from Ogden Mounts. One reason was his new relationship, and I didn't want to see them being affectionate at school. It hurt too much. I realized Jocelyn Joe's true colors not because of this incident, but because once I fell ill, Ogden Mounts only bought me medicine once. The next day, she deliberately arranged for Ogden Mounts to overhear me confessing my feelings, and then fell into a lotus pond, claiming I pushed her. Ogden Mounts, like during an anniversary event, didn't believe me and angrily demanded an apology. I refused, and he didn't believe my explanation. After that, our relationship reached a breaking point. By our junior year, after his father passed away and the Mounts family business suffered, his mother urgently needed help and was hit by a car, leaving her bedridden. The Mounts family business was on the brink of bankruptcy. At the same time, Jocelyn Joe's family also had an emergency requiring a large amount of money, leading her to leave Ogden Mounts. The Mounts family had been kind to me, especially his mother. During my years with them, she treated me like her own daughter. Ever since I began taking care of his bedridden mother, I've been wanting to repay her for the kindness she once showed me. While caring for his mother, I was also nearing the completion of my studies and working with Ogden Mounts on a business plan to attract new investors and revive the company. To secure investors, I spent nights waiting outside their offices just for a brief meeting. Moved by my sincerity, an investor agreed to hear my pitch at a cocktail party. The investor mixed various drinks for me to consume before listening to my proposal. I knew he was still not satisfied and wanted me to give up. I forced myself to drink everything with my eyes closed, and by the time the contract was signed, I collapsed from the pain. Thankfully, Ogden Mounts arrived just in time to take me to the hospital for a stomach pump. After that incident, my relationship with Ogden Mounts began to improve. Later, we moved out of the big house into a smaller apartment and sold the house to fund operations. He told me that he would eventually buy the house back and let me live there again. Together, we went through a lot and managed to revive the company, which is now the Collins Group. Going through hardships together is easy. Enjoying prosperity together is hard. During tough times, we could still get along and support each other. He would see my struggles, cook for me, and give me massages. When he proposed, kneeling with a ring, and thanked me for being by his side all these years, I believed it was genuine. Our wedding was small, with only a few friends attending. His mother touched my head and handed me a family heirloom bracelet, saying, "Beverly, I never expected that when we talked about a dowry, you would actually become a Mounts daughter-in-law. I'm sorry for the difficulties you faced." "It's not a problem," I replied. "Without his mother, I wouldn't have had the chance to attend high school and college. Without an education, my life would have been even harder." By then, the company had started to recover. I believed that with a little more effort, everything would improve. 3 months after our wedding, his mother passed away. Things did get better, but our relationship was shattered because of Jocelyn Joe. When I went downstairs after washing up, I saw Ogden Mounts still there, having breakfast. I had lost my appetite thinking about the past, so I grabbed my bag and left immediately. Outside, I saw Gregory Keats' car. Inside, I could feel Ogden Mount's intense gaze, clearly watching me. I didn't look back. I just knocked on the car window. Gregory Keats had a face that was quite charming and youthful, and when he smiled, he looked very bright and his skin was fair. I didn't remember him well as my junior, but after asking, I learned he was 3 years younger than me, though at 27, he looked like he was in his early 20s. Good morning, senior. Do you need something? I'm working on a project and had some questions. Since you brought Collins Group back to life, I thought you'd be the best person to ask. I saved you last night, so you wouldn't turn me down now, would you? To save your time, I came to drive you to the office and we can discuss it on the way. Since he had helped with the project, I couldn't refuse. As I got into the car, I saw Ogden Mount inside the house, smashing a milk cup against the wall, clearly very angry. I wasn't sure if Gregory Keats was driving slowly on purpose, but by the time I reached the office, Ogden Mount was already there. As soon as I got out of the car, he stopped me and mockingly looked at the departing car. When did your taste change? Now you like these pretty boys? I was too tired to explain. Why should he get to have his first love, while I can't even ride in someone else's car without him giving me a hard time? I retorted angrily. Don't you know that nowadays everyone likes charming and obedient young guys who know how to flatter? Old men like you, who only know how to be rude and angry, have long lost their market. He grabbed my hand and pushed me against the car. You say I'm rude. I'll show you what rude really means. He forcefully kissed me, and I stepped on his foot, causing him to back off in pain. Why are you acting out? Why not go find Jocelyn Joe? Can't you see? Are you out of your mind? You publicly announced you wanted a divorce, and now, in front of everyone, you're kissing me? Are you sick? People around started to stare, and I quickly bypassed him and went into the office building. Later, Gregory Keats messaged me, saying the proposal he gave me was approved and he wanted to thank me with a dinner. It's too much trouble. No need. This project is very important to me. Whether I can stay with the company depends on it. You helped me with such a difficult issue, so I must treat you. I reluctantly agreed to have dinner with him. When we arrived at the restaurant, I ran into Ogden Mount again. He looked at Gregory Keats with a dark expression, and before he could say anything, Jocelyn Joe showed up. You said you'd be here after a smoke, and now the food is getting cold. Seeing me, she remained calm. Beverly Jim found a new boyfriend. You've moved on, huh? Want to join us for dinner? What a shameless person. No need. It's uncomfortable. In the private room, after ordering, Gregory Keats excused himself briefly. When the food was served, a waiter brought a bouquet of bright red roses. Gregory, holding the roses, looked at me with sparkling eyes and said, Senior, may I pursue you? Actually, the real reason is I just want to see you more often. You know, I'm still married. Isn't the divorce almost finalized? I can wait for you. We've just met. I don't think we're suited for each other. Just give me a chance. Don't you want to try out dating and romance? His words touched me. Ogden Mount and I had never really dated. During the company crisis, we were too busy with work to even think about dating. Later, when our relationship soured, dating was out of the question. The most romantic thing we ever did was stand outside on New Year's Eve, watching fireworks and wishing to be together forever. If you don't say anything, I'll take it as a yes. Let's start with accepting these flowers. Gregory Keats was very talkative, and although I wasn't very expressive, he made me laugh several times. When he dropped me off, he even tried to kiss me goodbye, and I awkwardly stepped back. I guess I was too impatient. Sweet dreams. I took the roses inside, planning to find a vase for them. These flowers are so tacky. Even if they are tacky, you've never given me a single one. I found a vase, hummed a tune, and arranged the flowers. As soon as I finished, Ogden Mount, furious, grabbed the vase and, just like this morning, smashed it on the floor. He grabbed my arms. Are you really planning to be with him, just for a cheap bouquet of roses? Why not give it a try? No way, Beverly Jim. I won't allow it. He desperately kissed me, holding my back tightly. I pushed him as hard as I could, but it was futile. I bit him to make him stop. What are you going crazy for? You can't be with him. Don't tell me you're jealous. That would be too ridiculous. Don't be like in those novels where you only realize you love me when you see me with someone else and then want to chase me down. He wiped the blood from his mouth. You bit me. You bit me for that man. He picked me up like a wild beast, carried me into the room, pinned me down, and started unbuttoning my clothes. It's been a long time. You should fulfill your marital duties. I struggled, but the physical strength difference between men and women was too great. Let go. We're getting a divorce. Screw you. We're not divorced yet. Even if the woman doesn't agree, it's still a crime during marriage. If you touch me, I will sue you. Do you want tomorrow's headline to be about the chairman of Collins Group assaulting his wife and making it a scandal everyone knows about? He finally calmed down and released me. I immediately slapped him twice and pointed to the door, saying coldly, "Have your lawyer draft the divorce agreement immediately. If I don't see it within a week, I'll not only demand 20% of the shares. Now get out." He opened his mouth but didn't say anything. He picked up his suit from the floor and left the room. Jocelyn Joe stormed into my office, causing a scene. "What did you say to Ogden Meltz? He won't answer my calls now. If you want to be with him, have him handle the divorce agreement quickly and stop bothering me." I didn't even look up as I dialed the security office. How can unauthorized people just walk into the company? If you don't remove them in 5 minutes, you're all fired. As Jocelyn Joe was dragged away by security, she kept yelling about finding Ogden Meltz. I asked the secretary and learned it that Ogden Meltz had gone abroad for business meetings and wouldn't be back for at least 2 weeks. Meanwhile, Gregory Keats kept reaching out to me, inviting me to dinner, movies, walks, and playing sports together. Whenever I wasn't too busy, I'd agree to go out with him. He truly brought a lot of joy into my life that I hadn't experienced before, making me feel younger. Even people at the company noticed my improved appearance and asked about my skincare routine. Every time Gregory Keats tried to get closer, I refused. I told him that I was still married and that we were just friends, so there should be no overstepping. He looked disappointed and dejected. "Isn't the divorce almost finalized? Ogden Meltz will be back in just a few days, right? After that, we can process the divorce, and we can be together properly." I smiled and said, "Let's talk about it after the agreement is signed." "You said it's only 2 days away, right? You can wait a little longer, can't you?" "All right, I'll wait another 2 days. If you're still not divorced by then, you need to give me an answer." "Okay." 2 days later, Ogden Meltz came back from his business trip. He finally agreed to sign the divorce agreement, but when the agreement was presented, he had changed the terms. All I was getting was a house and $50 million in alimony, with no company shares. I slapped the agreement on the table. "This isn't what we agreed on." Ogden Meltz's face was stone cold. "You were shacking up with other men during our marriage, and now you want half of my assets. Don't forget that the Collins Group belongs to the Meltz family. You should be grateful for the house and $50 million. That's a lot of money." I scoffed. "Which of your eyes saw me with other men? Are these photos evidence? You've been dining out, going to movies, attending operas, and playing sports with them. Isn't that normal socializing?" I glanced at the photos. They were well taken. I might keep them as mementos. "It's quite something that you went through all this trouble to arrange a chanza encounter with one of my juniors and hired a drum to harass me for a hair saving the beauty scene." As soon as I spoke, Ogden Meltz's face changed. Did he really think I was still that naive 18-year-old? Easily deceived. I had already given all my affection to the Ogden Meltz I met back then. Now, I was fully aware of what was happening. Someone just appeared out of nowhere, claiming to fall for me and wanting to pursue me. His behavior was classic player material. It seemed he wanted to impress me. On the day he confessed, I secretly hired a private investigator to look into his background. I found out he specialized in targeting women who were about to divorce. He would have them caught in compromising situations before the divorce, making their relationships public and painting them as the wrongdoer, leading them to leave with nothing. I kept quiet about this to avoid alerting him, and because someone was willing to pay for a fake romance, I had Gregory Keats admit that Ogden Meltz had hired him to pursue me. I pulled out a stack of intimate photos of Ogden Meltz and Jocelyn Joe. They had been on a business trip. They were vacationing in Bali. They had planned it all along. The day they broke up was just a performance to make me think they were done. As soon as they left the company, Jocelyn Joe bought a plane ticket to Bali. Ogden Meltz's recent anger towards me was just a test to see my reaction to Gregory Keats. I never denied my relationship with Gregory Keats, and even fiercely resisted Ogden Meltz, making him think I was completely smitten with Gregory Keats. That's why he stayed away for 2 weeks, hoping to gather more evidence. Ogden Meltz's schemes backfired, leaving him with more incriminating evidence against himself. Do you understand how to revise this divorce agreement now? I'll notify my lawyer according to our original terms. Follow this contract, but the names need to be changed. You'll get a villa and $50 million. Ogden Meltz stood up abruptly and slammed the table. Don't push it. The Collins Group is our family business. If it weren't for my relentless efforts to find investors, the Collins Group would have been liquidated long ago. If you don't agree, are you trying to force me to give Gregory Keats recordings to the media? Do you want your dirty deeds exposed? You spend money to hire someone to pursue your wife, just to end up with a cuckold's fate. And these intimate photos, it seems Jocelyn Joe went straight to and obviated by Guy after coming back. If this goes to court, you'll be the one at fault. The $50 million is more than enough. Don't be greedy. Be happy with it. Ogden Meltz sat her day down in defeat, Think it over, and send the signed agreement back to me quickly. Otherwise, I might change my mind again, and you might end up with nothing. Ogden Mount sent the signed divorce agreement back to me and announced his wedding to Jocelyn Joe, which made headlines again. Jocelyn Joe even sent me a wedding invitation, wanting a grand wedding despite already getting $50 million. Maybe she wanted to show she didn't lose and that she managed to snatch Ogden Mount. Naturally, I attended. This time, I hired a real 20-something young man to accompany me. I felt I had wasted too many years. I should have moved on with my money and found someone else. With money, there are plenty of flattering men, and younger ones come with many tricks. If you get bored, just find the next one. It was foolish to cling to Ogden Mounts back then. The world is full of wonders. Looking at him now, over 30 and nowhere near as charming as the young men around me. Miss, don't look at your ex. Look at me, the young man said as he covered my eyes with his hand. All right, I teased, removing his hand. The wedding didn't go smoothly. Jocelyn Joe's ex-husband showed up and took Jocelyn Joe hostage. Ogden Mouts, looking anxious, said to him, "Don't be impulsive. Jocelyn Joe is pregnant." Unexpectedly, this statement only made the ex-husband more enraged. "You piece of trash. Not only did you leave me when I'm about to go bankrupt, but you also refused to abort the baby." He then lunged at Jocelyn Joe's stomach. Ogden Mouts tried to intervene to protect the baby and got stabbed in the abdomen. "You're an idiot for a woman like her. You risk your life." Her father wasn't sick. It was just a minor surgery costing less than $2,000. She came on to me, seduced me, and wanted to marry me. Do you think she was really desperate? She only loved money. Once I fell, she divorced and came back to you. You're a fool. The ex-husband wasn't done and continued stabbing Jocelyn Joe. "Why did you have to kill my child? I'm going to prison, and my manhood is ruined. I'm the only one in my family. You're condemning my bloodline to extinction. You deserve to die." By the time the police arrived, Jocelyn Joe was likely already dead. With blood everywhere, a joyful event turned into a tragedy. Ogden Mouts survived a stab wound but lost a kidney. He called me crying, saying he regretted being with Jocelyn Joe. I didn't have time to listen and hung up, busy choosing a male model. As for regret, I also regret loving him for 15 years and tormenting each other for 7. Luckily, we've gone our separate ways, never to cross paths again. The story is now finished. Feel free to subscribe to the channel for the latest updates. New novels are updated daily.